Welcome back, you guys. I hope you had an awesome weekend. It's fresh, bright and early Monday morning. Did you have a good weekend? I sure hope you did. We've got some exciting things planned for you this week. We're talking about budget, and more specifically, we're talking about value systems in relation to budgets. That's part one. Then we're going to get into some more practical stuff in part two of the budgets. But Ruben, why don't you just launch us off with what your thoughts are on if somebody's trying to set up a budget for their career, for their life, which I think is absolutely imperative, and why you think values are important and how that's related to budgets.
There you go, Misha. Super excited again, Monday morning. Let's dive in budgeting. So first of all, before we do any budget, I think it's important that we think about a core element of designing the personal budget of each one of us, right? So you did talk about values. Values shape our lives. If you think about it, there's some things that are very common to everybody, okay? Let's look at things that everybody values, right? Everybody values a shelter. Everybody wants to sleep safely somewhere, right?
I like having a shelter,
right?
Yeah.
And everybody values having food every day, hopefully, right?
I love food.
That's a great thing. And also safety is a very important element. We want to be safe. So these three things, shelter, food, and safety, are the basic values for everybody. Then you can add things on top of that, which are your priorities. Your priorities in life, how you see life, what is the legacy that you have, a cultural background of your family that also shapes your values, what is actually important for you. And you can go broad and very specific. Now let's go to some examples, right? So now we're still talking about budgeting. This is the topic. Now you guys might be thinking, well, budgeting, values, how does it match? Well, it matches tremendously. First thing, you define what are the important things for you. What do you value? And those are really the elements that are going to shape the budgeting, the financial part. Because if you invest on something, it's because you're investing, again, we talked about risk reward, we're investing on a reward, right? And the reward is actually the values that you give a certain priority in your life. So examples of values would be some broad ones, right? Could be education, could be spirituality, could be family, could be friends, could be, not more specific, traveling, discover the world, nature, and learn an instrument because you value art, play the guitar, play the violin, play the piano, or you could go with things like gardening, right? You really value gardening. So I'm giving more specifics because you will see that this will impact your budget. There's some broad things, they're more theory, but then there are more practical issues that you apply to your own values. So once you define these, and I'll actually gonna challenge each one of you that you write down, not many, but write many first, then choose like three or four of them. What are the most important ones? And you top pick the priority ones, and you write it down, you look at them. Does this define Misha? Does this define Ruben? This is really if somebody looks at these core values, could they actually see that person in there? And once you have that, right, you have something that I like to call it like an anchor. You know, on a boat, anchors are very important, right? You don't want to go astray with the tide up and down. You have some flexibility, but you're tied down to something. And the values are the things you're tied down to. Now, once you get that, the first step to do a budget, I would recommend that you actually don't do it, but you observe. You know, a good thing before making any decision, as I think we discussed last time, was information. So you got to gather information. And information is reality. What is the reality? Right now, if you go about during a whole month of spending money and you write down every single expenditure and you put, I went to a restaurant, it was $56. Then I paid my rent, it was, $700, $800, whatever. And you write these all down, you don't have expectations at this stage. You just write them down because you want to see the actual facts. And you don't want...
Do you know what's fun, actually, Ruben? I'm going to let you continue there in a second, but what's actually fun is to see the difference between reality and a person's perception. So what's actually fun as a precursor to that step, which I think is critical, is for somebody to just spend, it doesn't take long, like 15 minutes, a half an hour, and just jot down all the major things that they can think of off the top of their mind that they spend money on in a month, and just put a dollar value next to them. Rent, oh yeah, I know my rent's $850. I think hydro, I pay, I don't know, $50. I probably spend about $400 a month on food. And then I go out to eat a few times, so maybe an extra couple $100 on that. And just kind of start jotting that down. And what's fun and interesting is then when you continue with what you're going to say right now, to compare those two at the end of the month or at the end of 2 or 3 months and see how different and how the same they are in certain areas. So go ahead and continue.
Yeah, that's a great hint. That's a great hint, Misha. Exactly. That's a very good point. Before you actually go to find out, you write what you think it is. Because sometimes we believe that we are actually doing something, and actually that's not the case, right? And it's a good
and it goes back to values, right? Like the reality is where you spend the money is where your values are. Not necessarily where you want your values to be.
Wait a second. Not necessarily.
I understand. I understand where you're going, and I'm going to let you continue there. But it's true that where we spend our time, our focus, and our money, that's where our values are. But where we want them to be might be something completely different, right?
Oh, that's a good point.
And I'm going to let you continue because I know you have something to talk about on that. So go ahead and continue. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point because there are values of reality and values of aiming for, right? You aim for, you think you have those values, but actually in reality, you're not. You don't praise those values. You're not actually investing in those values. That's a very good point. Because the expectation list, if you write down, how much do I spend, let's say, dining out, right? You might think, I don't spend that much. No, I don't spend, right? How much? I think I spend like maximum $80 a month. Okay, let's just that as a case, right? And then you go through the month, and you go here for $20 and then $30 and $50 and another $40 and then $50. Let's say you end up like $160. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah.
But listen, don't deceive yourself. It's not $50, right? So you have an expectation, and you did write that down before, as you said. So you put that comparison of like A with B. Now you go through the month, and you add up everything by categories. So you could have again the housing category, the utilities, anything. Actually, utilities is something that people think that in North America, I think that everybody is a little bit more loose in utilities. I think that utilities is very energy is free, and in Europe we had all this sense of saving, right? So we're very careful with turning off the lights and all that stuff, because there's this idea that I cannot control. It's the minimum thing I can do, but actually you can do very small tweaks, especially if we have a tight budget, to have some impact at the end of the month. And months add up to years, right? Let's suppose that somebody, I think that most of our audience probably doesn't smoke, but some people might smoke, right? It's their decision to smoke.
Yep.
And they might think, I smoke, I don't spend that much money, I don't know how much is a pack of cigarettes, probably $8 or something. And it's not really much.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good example, it's very, very simplistic example. You add up, you repeat certain things, and you think that you're not spending a lot of money, but when you add up, all of a sudden, you might end up with end of year of $1,500. Right? You say, well, is it actually worth the money I'm spending every $8 for a pack? I'm giving this example.
Right.
There's many things that you think it's at a certain expenditure has a certain value, but once you go through that month, you find out something else. So again, you put your expectations, you have written your values, you put your expectations in what you think that you actually spend each of those categories, everything you do in life, and even things that you don't think you have done. Because once you go through the month, and if you're disciplined enough just for a month to write every single expenditure you have, at the end of the month, you add it up, right? And then you compare and say, wait a second, probably, this category is totally different than what I thought it was. Go ahead. You were saying something.
Yeah, I was going to just say a couple tips because writing everything down is one way definitely to do it. There's a couple other ways. So if you have online banking, I would encourage all of you that don't. I mean, in this day and age, I think most people do. But set up an online banking if you don't have it. And then there's two things you can do, right? So one is you can just look at your checkings account. So if you use debit for anything, or if you have things that are pre-authorized, so if your rent and things like that come out pre-authorized, you can just look at your checkings account and you can see which things came out in that month. And then something that I personally do, and everybody does their budgets and so forth differently, but I run pretty much everything through credit card when I make purchases through the month. I don't buy on credit. I always have it paid off, and so there's never a outstanding amount on it.
You're looking for
what
those
that allows
miles,
me to
Misha.
do.
I do.
That's right. What it allows me to do is track very carefully all my expenditures, right? So if I know, pretty much the only place I use a debit card is like Costco, because they don't have, you can't use a credit card there. But, but it's very easy to track, 2 times at Costco in a month or something. And basically everything else is in credit card. Have a way, all I'm saying is make sure that there's a way that you guys have to be able to track an easy way for you guys to be able to track what your budget is in that month, to be able to just look at everything and then to plug it in one of those categories.
The
Go ahead
tools,
and continue.
The tools serve for the purpose, right? So again, the purpose is that we have a good benchmark of our what we thought, actually what happens. So the tool that you use that you did mention very well, there are different tools to achieve that same objective, but you want to have at the end of the month, you want to have a comparison, see what your expectations were and what actually happened.
Yeah.
So once you have that, you make an analysis, and you got to be truthful. Misha, it's really hard for us to be truthful, right? So many.
It hurts, right?
It hurts, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You look at something, and you always find ways to justify. Oh, it was because of this. It was an exception, or probably I this receipt doesn't belong to this month. I'm exaggerating, but you go through all these type of excuses, right? And then you're in a kind of a denial. If the higher the shock, the higher the temptation of denial. So it's important that you look at the reality and say, no, this is actually what's happening. Now, why did we define the values? That was the big question at the beginning. Why did we find values?
Yes, exactly.
Because actually, it was not my values, Misha. It was not your values. It was somebody else's values. It was John and Mary's values. The person that did this same analysis in the beginning, and they actually established for them, it was really, really important that the family was extremely important for them. And then we could go, financials. It could be also time management. But let's talk just about financials, budgeting of financials. And you see that you're not actually investing anything in your family, right? And you are not spending time with your family. So your financials are not aligned with activities that are enhancing the value that you give value to, which is spending time with your family, right? And you can do it for free, obviously, but some things would probably require some money. Let's suppose that you like to go to nature, and how much actually do you spend to go somewhere and to be in nature for 4 or 5 days with your family? And you look at the end of the year and say, I've never done this, but I did put this in my first value. That's the problem. Then your values are not well established, which I believe they are, because you haven't looked at the numbers yet. So you're more truthful at that level. But when you find this in real paper and real expenditures, that's going to be the real test. Okay, are my financials aligned with my values, right? That if I want to actually to have an education in a certain thing, in a certain topic, actually how much am I investing in finances to achieve that education? That's another example, right?
Yeah. How do you get somebody to value? I have an idea in my mind, but how do you really get somebody to value? Talking about values in a different way, how do you get somebody to value having a budget? Because I know that a lot of people, just the word or the concept of a budget is very restricting, right? It's oh man, I have to make sure I stick to exactly this, and if I don't, well, I'm going out of my budget, but I'd like to spend a little bit more in this. How do you convince people that a budget is worthwhile? Like, what's the value proposition behind having one?
See, it's like a flight plan, right, Misha? If we go A to B, you got to prepare where you're going through, right? I'm going through mountains, I'm going through valleys, through lakes, desert. And a budget is just a way of a track to achieve my objectives. It's not really, it doesn't put you in some type of prison or inflexibility. No, that's why we want to define budget aligned with values. If the values were not there, it will be meaningless, right? So it helps you to go on track to aim for what you did establish as a priority. Yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. And to me, it's actually the opposite. It's actually incredibly freeing to have that because, there's a stat that 40% of Americans don't have $400 savings in their account.
That's
right?
True.
That's truth, and that's staggering, and that is debilitating, right?
Yeah.
And those people, I guarantee, if you did a statistic on it, those people, probably a high percentage of them, 95% of them, don't have a budget established. That's just purely a guess, right? But the reason I think that is because if you don't have a budget established, you don't know what you're spending, and therefore, most likely you're going to spend all of your money by the end of the month. You're going to get to the end of the month, and you're going to realize, I don't have any money left. Let's try it again next month and see if I have a little bit more money next month. But you don't have anything. An analogy, I used to use cash all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Back when I was younger, it's nice to have cash in your wallet or something. And what I started finding when I was using cash is, you got a $20 bill or a couple $20 bills in your wallet, and then you go purchase something, and maybe it costs $17.25 or 23 cents or something, right? What happens is, you get a 10 and a 5 back, and then you get a loonie and a toonie, or, whatever. You get some change back and some dimes and nickels and pennies and whatever. And as the amount gets less valuable, you put less value on it, and that little bit of change kind of starts getting lost, right? Mm-hmm. You throw it in a change bag, or, bag or whatever, right? And you got your bills in your pocket and maybe a loonie or something like that, right? We're in Canada, guys, so we've got loonies and toonies here. But the concept is the smaller amounts of money start to go unnoticed. And if you're not keeping track of it, if you're not keeping it in a specific spot and going to change that into the bank and, keep it in your bank account and stuff, that money just gets thrown here and there. And all of a sudden that petty change gets used for just little things. I want to grab a coffee. I'll just, use my change for that or whatever. And you start to not put value on that money, and it just kind of dwindles away. It's like having a leaky bucket, right? So if you start having holes in a bucket, you have one little hole, it's going to take a while for that water to drain out. You have 2 holes, 3 holes, 4 holes, 10 holes. All of a sudden that water is going to start draining out a lot faster. Having a budget is like having a bucket that doesn't have any holes, because where every penny of your money is going. And so having the ability to trace that and track that and understand, like, oh wow, there was $200 that went out into this thing that I didn't even know I was spending, I had no idea, right? And people have subscriptions to things that they don't even know that they have subscriptions to anymore. It's $3.99 there a month, it's $8.99 there a month, and that's just like that change getting thrown in the corner, or like having a leaky bucket and it's just kind of sifting out, right? So just a couple thoughts on that as well.
Pick up again what you said is very important, like the stat, which is quite sad, and we're not. This is something really for everybody, because when you look at the stat, it says that 40% of Americans don't have $400 for an emergency. Okay, now if you're in that situation, let me tell you good news. Okay, good news, because we're not here to criticize. We're actually here to give you tools. That's the whole purpose of this channel. We give you tools so you can think in a different way and take action. Listen, you don't need to. You're not a victim of the system that has actually imposed this systematic spending that puts you in a situation that you don't have $400 for an emergency. Okay, you don't need that. Now, the way you do this is you look at the other way around, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're on a roll here.
Okay.
This video is getting pretty long. Do you want to leave this right here and go to part 2?
Absolutely.
All right, you guys.
That's a good moment.
We don't want to make these videos too long, because we know that your guys' time is precious. It's valuable to have short amounts of time of information, and then to be able to kind of churn on that information. If we give you too much information at once, you're going to lose half of it, and it's going to become less valuable. That's why we're cutting it right here. I hope you guys find this valuable, and I really hope that you guys tune in next week for the next episode. Please leave some comments below. Let us know what your guys' plans are for major values. I would love to know. I think Ruben would love love to know as well, just a couple, like 1 or 2 major value categories that you guys would have that you do or would like to have in a budget. All right? Until next time, we're going to talk to you guys later. Bye. See you later.